Hey, Morty, let me ask you a question real quick. Does evil exist? And if so, can one detect and measure it? Rhetorical question, Morty. The answer's yes, you just have to be a genius. Cute. Your sister's boss gave me a microscope that would have made me retarded.
Ooh, oh boy, Rick. I don't think you're allowed to say that word, you know?
Morty, I'm not disparaging the differently abled. I'm stating the fact that if I had used this microscope, it would have made me mentally retarded.
Okay, yeah, but I don't think it's about logic, Rick. I think the word has just become a symbolic issue for powerful groups that feel like they're doing the right thing.
Well, that's retarded.
The cultural domination of television has been an event in the making for decades, and each passing day, the concept of television becomes more influential. Advertisements, word of mouth, reviews, trailers, and more contribute to the growing success of TV shows. But there is one thing that separates successful television from influential television: the audience. While some shows appear as financially successful and well reviewed, it may have a non-loyal viewership. Lately, the rise of cult television has depended solely on the enthusiasm from fans of a television show, regardless of the actual size of the audience. Merchandising, conventions, fan clubs, and fads are results of a community like it, with some audiences becoming loud enough to propel shows to another level of viewership. Personally, I feel like the absolute best modern example of a cult audience for TV is the fandom of Adult Swim's animated comedy Rick and Morty. The show originally aired in 2013 and it's currently on its 4th season. Rick and Morty was co-created by Justin Roiland, a comedian and voice actor, and Dan Harmon, a producer and the showrunner of the Community. Since it aired, Rick and Morty has consistently broken records at Adult Swim, becoming the network's top TV show of all time and first ever Adult Swim comedy to win a Primetime Emmy Award. It is one of the most successful animated programs in the past decade and has completely excelled the careers of both its showrunners. The show follows the two titular characters, Rick Sanchez and Morty Smith. Sanchez is an alcoholic scientist with the ability to jump between alternate dimensions, and Smith is his prepubescent grandson. Rick and Morty has a tongue-in-cheek plot which is a parody of Back to the Future's Doc and Marty in both name and appearance. However, the show decides to avoid time travel because it's complicated. Similarly to other animated series, Rick and Morty has a long overarching storyline which develops over smaller, less plot-intense episodes. Eventually, it transforms from a basic comedy to a character study on Rick and the effects of having infinite versions of himself and everyone around him. He is unique in the way that Rick assumes he knows the answer to every question in the universe, because, well, he's the smartest man in the galaxy. Although, the show likes to explore the negative effect of being as intelligent as Rick by introducing the concept of nihilism, alcoholism, and his own depression and loneliness as a result of his adventures. Rick thinks he knows everything and he assumes that the meaning of life is that there simply isn't one at all and that all life forms are just mistakes. But the show's other characters, their own personal arcs show clearly that while Rick believes that most of life is meaningless and replaceable, the meaning of life is the effect of those around you. We sometimes see the humanity in Rick when he subtly shows that he actually cares for and loves his grandson Morty, despite his own denial of caring for anyone. It's likely that him being so adamant on not loving Morty is his defense mechanism for trying not to get too attached to anything he believes can be taken from him as easily as it was given. His own fault in this is that his own caution in avoiding attachment directly results in his loneliness and depression. Over time in the show, we see Rick's old friends like Bird Person and Unity give him temporary happiness, and yet they're taken away from him. Bird Person gets murdered in season 2, and Unity decides she can no longer be in a relationship with Rick. Bird Person's death results in Rick's grief, which makes him decide to turn himself into prison, and Unity is much more serious. Unity leaving Rick devastates him to the point where we see him attempt to commit suicide in an episode, and his alcoholism is especially dark and horrifying for a cartoon show which is usually considered a comedy, but it just shows how emotionally invested each character is and that the showrunners consider how the adventures both Rick and Morty go on affects their state of mind and how intelligence itself can be considered a blessing and a curse. While the show delves deep into these usually dark topics, there is something much more toxic and obsessive, which overshadows the quality of the show, something that both benefits and severely damaged Rick and Morty as a TV show: its audience. Or at least a vocal minority. The show has one of the most notoriously obsessive and influential fan bases of the decade, on par with audiences of cartoons like Simpsons, Family Guy, Adventure Time, and more. Rick and Morty has an incredibly large and loud audience, which is one of Adult Swim's biggest for any of its shows. According to Hulu, the gender split of Rick and Morty's fandom is actually quite equal, with a 60-40 split of male to female fans on Hulu. The show's season 3 premiere episode made it the most watched series in the history of the network with over 11 million viewers, so its success can only really be put into perspective by the fact that Adult Swim renewed Rick and Morty for 70 episodes. For context, the first 3 seasons consisted of 31 episodes. A lot of reports claim that Rick and Morty is the most popular television comedy in the entire US among millennials, topping The Big Bang and Modern Family. But while its audience is gigantic, that isn't what makes the show worthy of being called cult television. Its fanbase is one of the most vocal audiences in recent memory, dominating areas of internet culture through memes, videos, and even fads based off of real episodes. Let's get into this. A lot of professional critics and common fans of the show label the vocal fandom of Rick and Morty as toxic and a hate movement, with criticisms hitting peak levels after a series of events that took place in 2017. After the show's season 3 premiere, which was one of its most viewed episodes, the show had a joke about an old McDonald's limited edition Szechuan sauce. Fans turned this sauce into a meme and created enough noise for McDonald's to actually bring back the Szechuan sauce for a single day. It came back on October 7th, 2017, and stores very quickly ran out of the sauce within hours. Stock was heavily limited, and the restaurant massively underestimated its demand. As a result, fans of the show actually raided McDonald's restaurants across the country. Videos quickly spread online of fans jumping on counters, screaming at employees, and even using megaphones to try and demand that they get some of the now sold out sauce. Some McDonald's restaurants resorted to calling the police when some situations got too aggressive, and the internet was swarmed by people criticising and joining in on the fandom's extreme disregard for basic manners. Instantly after selling out, some fans sold the sauce packets on eBay, with some listings selling for up to $14,000 per packet. There was a woman who traded her packet for a car. I mean, come on. These events propelled the Rick and Morty fanbase to another level and set them. Rick and Morty decided to hire some female writers. This didn't go well. 2 writers in particular, Jane Becker and Jessica Gao, were credited as writing the episodes Rick Manson the Stone and Pickle Rick. Bear in mind, Pickle Rick won an Emmy Award. The pair were harassed on social media, with some fans hacking them and sharing their private information like their address and their phone numbers. They just backlashed against the writers' room, claiming that the team only hired female writers to appease diversity and that they were social justice warriors. And he said he found it offensive and called them knobs, claiming that they want to protect the content they think they own. The fandom of Rick and Morty is one of the most notoriously obsessive cult TV audiences of recent memory, and with people describing the viewership as a hate movement, I mean, it's a perfect example of how people need to begin separating content from the people who watch it. Thousands of potential watchers have been put off this show due to the intimidating and vocal fanbase. One notable feature of a large amount of Rick and Morty fans is that they believe that people who criticise the show just don't understand it, and claim that the show's humour is complex and intricate, therefore meaning that you need to be intelligent to find it entertaining. In reality, Rick and Morty does indeed contain themes that only smarter viewers would catch, but it also has pretty basic jokes and doesn't require much second thought to understand. I mean, there's literally a character called Mr. Poopy Butthole. Come on. The Explosion tried to explain the toxicity by claiming that after years of pop culture entrenching the notion that smart people are assholes, people act like assholes to appear smart. Andrea Braithwaite, an employee at the Institute of Technology at the University of Ontario, studies geek masculinity. She draws parallels between Rick in the show and the toxic fans who look up to him, mentioning that as Rick is a cynical narcissistic character who sees himself as superior to others and acts out of self-interest, it may reflect on the audiences seeing that kind of personality as an endorsement. She also mentions how some members of the audience consider themselves as gatekeepers, where they think of if some other fans or viewers of the show don't understand elements as much as them, they are superior to them. This is usually the case in a lot of cult TV audiences. Braithwaite tries to find a motive for this behaviour, pointing out how the success of a show and its entrance into the mainstream makes fans feel like it is less special. At the end of the day, it begs the question as to what extent you can blame the content of a show on the behaviour of the people who watch it, and how difficult it is to separate art from its audience. Rick and Morty is not going anywhere anytime soon, but the hatred behind its toxic fanbase has damaged its reputation heavily, and with its 4th season currently airing, it will be up to fans to judge whether to ignore the criticism of the audience or turn their back on it.
Alright! Drop the beat!